What is going on, guys? MJ2005 Gundam here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Minipla Great Shock Gundam created exclusively for this lineup. Made up of a different ensemble of kits, it's essentially a slightly tamer version of the SD Combiner in case the Super Shock wasn't to your taste, perhaps unlike the gun they each come with. And since this will also be a sextuple review, please utilize the timestamps for navigation. Starting off with the Shock Gundam Mark II, and despite it coming with 7 runners and a smaller sticker sheet, it's essentially the same elementary build as before, featuring thin gates and an easy construction, with the antenna pieces being the only changes. This is only further evidence from the final looks, as it is essentially the original Shock Gundam in blue, which I find more palatable. Stickers are only used on the eyes, chest vents, abs, and crotch gem, but nothing else has changed compared to the original besides the different antenna pieces and the lack of a disembodied mask on its butt. Weapons are carried over from the original as well, on top of the old Super Shock mask being left over, so for more details, please check out the original review. The second and third units are the only new members of the group. That being said, the SG Red Frame and SG Blue Frame are variants of each other, both featuring 4 runners with only the A runner being different between the two, since they're based on the vanilla Astray units. Despite that, their builds are just as simple as the others of the group and should trouble no one. Sure, their assemblies can get a bit monotonous given that they're basically the same kit, but despite the heavy use of stickers for their eyes, head sensors, helmet trims, and all color details on the torso and waist, they still look good for a Minipla representation of the standard Astray units. I'm especially impressed by the color separated face and detail, bringing the proper Astray look to life. And besides the colors, the only difference between the two is the backpack, as the red frames is inspired by the flight unit, while the blue frame takes the motif of the tactical arms. Beyond that and their heavy use of stickers, they're still good looking for smaller than average SDs. Articulation of the two are barely different from each other due to the reliance on ball joints, though I find that the arms being tied to the shoulder vents is a little awkward to get used to. Apart from that, the articulation is sufficient for using their weapons, the Straight for the red frame, and beam rifle for the blue frame. Sadly, they don't come with their own candy themed weapons, but they do come with various masks and odd parts that will come in handy later on, with duplicates left over from the blue frame in case you've lost them. Lastly, the SG New Gundam 2nd and SG Sazabi 2nd are just plain recolors of their original units with no changes to their loadouts. Sure, the references to the High New and Hyakushiki are cute, and the Sazabi does not have a sticker for the crotch, but otherwise, they're exactly the same as their roots, so please check out the original review for details of these two. With all of them assembled, it's time for the nigh identical combination process. The Shock, New, and Sazabi are prepped the same way as the Super Shock, and similarly goes for the Astrays as well. Besides the need to remove their V-fins to plug on the visors, before reattaching them onto the backpacks for reasons, and attaching the assembly onto their feet. Spin the heads around, deploy the ball joints from the back of their heads, before plugging them, and the Zeta-esque mask onto the Shock, and you'll have the Great Shock Gundam. Despite being just as much of a mishmash of parts, the Great Shock Gundam looks slightly better compared to the Super Shock, at least in my opinion. Probably because of the uniformity of the Astrays functioning as either arm and a cleaner facepiece, but it is still just as whimsical as the Super Shock Gundam either way. Though I will recommend panel lining the kits due to their heavy use of white in the final form. The pseudo elbow bends are still provided by the Astray twins, though caution should be exercised with the antennas on their fists. For weapons, the Great Shock has access to the Gatling gun on its left fist, but it also has its own combo weapon, depending on how you assemble the primary weapons as well. By plugging the swords into the barrel of the bazooka, before plugging both rifles into the bazooka's stock, you'd have the Great Shock Gun Sword, what seems to be a more reasonable melee weapon until you notice the guns acting as the guard. Alternatively, plug the sword into the barrel, attach the Straight and beam shot rifle into the sword, and connect the blue frames rifle into the bazooka. That will result in the Great Shock Gun Rifle, and I gotta attest that it looks more sensible compared to the Super Shock's variant, otherwise they're just as ridiculous looking as the original. There's nothing about the Great Shock Gundam and its components that I haven't said in the Super Shock Gundam review. I bought it for a dare, all 6 configurations look good with solid but brittle structures and more than obvious combiner elements, and they're all good fun despite their really obvious flaws. All this set does is provide a different visual option, with the Astrays being the only new but somewhat lackluster additions to the lineup. I will say this though, the new trick color scheme might make the Great Shock Gundam more tolerable compared to the Super Shock, but the whole Megazord combination is still just as ridiculous but creative as a whole. Sure, as a standalone, the Great Shock Gundam is only just as recommendable to the same niche of people as the Super Shock Gundam, but if you have the latter, there might be one more gimmick between them that is worth having them both. And that's all for me. Thank you for watching, drop a like and comment if you did enjoy the video, subscribe for more content like this, and feel free to follow me on social media with the links down below. That said, take it easy, stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out guys, bye bye.